you all how to make a quinoa protein bowl. And this bowl can be made in a lot of different ways. You can substitute a lot of different things. You can just kind of make it however it fits your taste and your grocery list best. I have the general ingredients to start with here, and I believe a picture was just shown so that you can pause it and get a good look at what you'd want to put on your list, as well as the actual recipe card itself. So here today I'm going to be making this with tofu instead of chicken. So I've got my firm tofu here, and I'm going to be making a portion big enough for some of my friends. So for like 5 to 7 servings. So I've got 2 cans of tofu here, and then I've got my Greek yogurt for topping, which is optional. But again, it goes really well on top as almost like a sour cream replacement, but it goes really well with all the Mediterranean flavors in this dish. And I've got baby spinach here, which is also optional, but mixing it in kind of like a quinoa salad bowl is really yummy as well. It's another great way to get fiber in and vitamins and minerals from the spinach. The quinoa itself, and I've got yellow or white quinoa here. You could use red if you wanted. Yellow quinoa is a little bit easier to digest. It has a little bit less insoluble fiber in it. I've got my English cucumber, so we're gonna chop that up and put it in the bowl as well. And then some other toppings like the Kalamata olives, the sun-dried tomatoes, which again, they're optional taste. You could add in fresh tomatoes if you preferred grape tomatoes, Roma tomatoes if you didn't want sun-dried. Some people don't love olives. You could easily just use capers, which I have here, instead of the olives, or neither, and just replace those tastes with whatever you choose for the dressing on this dish. And then garbanzo beans here, which we're gonna warm in a pan and mix in as well, and that just adds even more fiber and plant protein to the dish, makes it really filling and satisfying. And then I've got some spices to the left of me, and again, you can sort of mix and match spices that you want. The recipe guides you generally with sort of the flavors that mix well with this dish. And I'm using, for example, today I'm using curry powder instead of just turmeric powder as listed in the recipe. It just includes additional spices, and I don't have paprika with me today, so I figured I would include curry powder instead. And then I've got my chili powder here, and there's salt and pepper off to the side as well. And there will also be a picture flashing before the screen that's going to show you materials that you'll need, and I can talk about those. Alrighty, so we're going to discuss materials and supplies needed to get all of this yummy food cooked up. So you're going to want just a regular skillet. This is going to be used to warm the chickpeas. It's going to be used if you want to saute your spinach instead of adding it fresh. It's going to be used to heat the tofu and saute it in your spices and olive oil. And then you're going to want a pot. This one's small because I'm doing a cup of quinoa. You can use any size pot that fits what you need. And that will be used to boil and simmer the water and get the quinoa cooked up. A strainer if you're going to wash your spinach and put in there fresh. And then a cutting board, which I have here. A cutting board, which you're going to use to chop your sun-dried tomatoes. You could put them in there whole if you wanted, but if you want to chop up smaller pieces, you'd use this for that as well. To chop your English cucumber. And if you're making the dressing that is on the recipe card with this recipe, you would use a cutting board to chop the garlic, open the lemon for the fresh squeezed lemon juice, and to chop the parsley and the chives. And we're going to talk about the dressing later on. At the end, I'll show anybody who's interested how to make that. It's really simple. Again, you can kind of add in or swap out things, certain ingredients in it, and really personalize it. And then I have a knife for chopping. And for scooping the quinoa and like stirring it around, I've got a slotted spoon and just a spatula, like flipper utensil to use to scoot around food that we heat up in the pan. And then there's olive oil right here for heating the tofu. And additionally, for the dressing, you can use a food processor, or you can use just a strong blender. I have a Ninja blender, which I will use to chop up and blend the ingredients. And again, if you prefer to purchase a Green Goddess dressing from the grocery store and you feel it goes well with this, you totally can. This is just a homemade Green Goddess version. You could do any type of vinaigrette, turmeric ginger vinaigrette, lemon herb vinaigrette. Those types of dressings would really blend the flavors here, and so that's also, those are some other options that you can choose. Okay, so we're getting ready to cook, so I've removed my jewelry, I've washed my hands, and I'm gonna start with the quinoa. So I've rinsed and drained my quinoa as the directions on its packaging say, and I've added 1 cup of dry quinoa, and I'm adding 2 cups of water. So here's the last cup of water going in. And I'm just gonna stir that around a little bit to combine the quinoa with all the water, and it's clumping a little bit, so we'll give that a quick stir. And then we're gonna get this on the stove and bring it to a boil, and then we're gonna reduce it to a simmer. And the packaging will tell you how long to simmer the quinoa after it has been boiled. I'm going to warm the tofu in a pan, and so I'm just following the instructions on how to open this package, and it does require use of scissors, so I just grabbed my kitchen scissors to open it properly. So here I've just lightly oiled my pan. I'm gonna get it heated up, and we can get the tofu in here with its spices. All right, so I've got my tofu in the pan. I'm just gonna use this to stir it around a little bit. And for seasoning the tofu, it's really up to you how much of which spices you want. They all blend really well together. Another great thing about this dish that I've said before is you can really personalize it. So now that we've got that spread out, and I'll show you what it looks like. So now that we've got the tofu in there, I'm gonna take my spices that I mentioned earlier. So we've got ground pepper, sprinkle that in there. Just a couple shakes, enough to cover the top lightly, and then just a sprinkle of salt or a pinch of salt. I really like my chili powder, so I'm gonna put a good bit on there. And again, I'll show you what the tofu looks like after I've seasoned it, and then my curry powder. So this is what the tofu looks like seasoned, and now I'm gonna mix it around, stir it around a little bit to get it nice and heated up. So I've just set my timer to let the quinoa simmer and finish cooking, and that was about 15 minutes on the packaging. Our spinach is now beautifully washed. So our tofu is looking nice and warm and seasoned. So I'm going to remove it from heat. It's been on medium heat, and then I reduced it to low heat after about 6 or 7 minutes. Overall, we've been heating it for about almost 10 minutes. Again, low or medium heat. We're just adding spices and warming it and some olive oil. And I'm going to get this into a bowl and prepared for when we top the recipe with. So here's our tofu looking delicious. And I'm gonna move on to heat the chickpeas. Something that I did not mention at the beginning of the video, and I will mention now, is you will want a can opener for any canned ingredients. In this case, the chickpeas are canned. So I'm gonna open this and with the lid still on, drain the water out into the sink. And then with our nice oiled, seasoned pan from the tofu, we're just gonna heat the chickpeas in there. And again, our quinoa has got about 8 minutes left. It's still simmering while we're getting everything else done. So we've got our chickpeas in the pan, just mix them around, getting them heated, picking up some of the leftover spices from the tofu. And again, you could add additional spices here if you wanted, but again, you have the seasoned tofu and you're gonna have the dressing as well. So it's totally optional. I've got my sun-dried tomatoes here, and I'm going to take a spoon. They're in olive oil, so I'm gonna take a spoon, kind of drain the oil, the excess oil off, and place them on our vegetable cutting board here, just because I am going to slice these into some smaller pieces. You don't have to do that, like I said, but you are able to get them a little more evenly distributed if you've got some smaller pieces mixed in there. And I love sun-dried tomatoes, so I'm scooping out probably a third of this jar. Chickpeas have been on low heat for about 8 minutes now, and they were just all warmed up and steam was coming off them. They've got the seasoning incorporated that was left in the pan. So I've scooped them out of the pan and placed them in this bowl. I've got our capers. This is 3 tablespoons in this bowl here. I've got a half a cup of this chopped sun-dried tomatoes. Again, with these amounts, because you are making just a big bowl mixed together, if you like more or less of each of these ingredients. Oh, that is our quinoa timer. So I'll get that quinoa off the heat. I'm gonna turn the heat off now. So again, like I was saying, with any of these amounts, you can add more or less and use the recipe as a guide. And then I've got a 1/4 cup of Kalamata olives here. They're sliced, they've been pitted. So we're really assembling all of our ingredients here, and we'll be ready to mix the bowl together pretty soon. So we've got our spinach, cucumber, chickpeas, capers, tofu, sun-dried tomatoes, Kalamata olives, and lastly our quinoa. I'm going to combine everything in here. So we're gonna get that tofu in there, the chickpeas next. And again, you can do this in any order you want, but I think it works well to have the base and the proteins and then adding all the colorful veggies on top. It makes for a really nice presentation as well. So then we can add the spinach. And mix that in a little bit. Then we can add our cucumber. Our olives. Our tomatoes. And last but not least, the capers. Okay. So this is what the bowl looks like. We've got to mix everything together, and it's going to be really yummy. We've got our bowl pretty well mixed. It smells incredible. Now, while all of these ingredients are mixing together and blending their flavors, we are going to start the simple dressing. So I have a trusty food processor here that I'm going to now add my dressing ingredients into. So on the cutting board is my half cup of chives and my half cup of parsley, and I'm just gonna chop those before I put them in there. Just roughly chop, because the food processor will do the rest of the chopping. Next, I'm going to squeeze fresh lemon juice. Now the recipe calls for 2 tablespoons of fresh squeezed lemon juice. I'm gonna eyeball it. I love lemon juice, but if you want to be exact about it, you can totally squeeze out lemon juice either by hand or with an actual juicer that you would use for oranges, and measure out a tablespoon amount. So the last step for this dressing, so now we've got all of our ingredients in here, is just 1/3 cup of water, and the tahini listed on the dressing recipe, I don't have tahini with me today. I also don't mind just like the garlicky, herby taste of this dressing. So again, you can use tahini, you don't have to. You can buy this dressing from the store, you don't have to. But either way, our next step is we're gonna be blending this together in the food processor, and we can get ready to top our bowl with it. So one thing I am gonna add really quickly, I'm over here on the other side of the counter, where I've got the appliance plugged in for the food processor, is I'm actually gonna add some nutritional yeast, which is almost like a cheesy-ish flavor, and it goes really well with tofu. So I'm gonna add this to the veggies in our dressing and blend it up really nicely. I've done this before when I've made this recipe with my family, and then I did it one time with some friends, and it turned out really well. So again, that's totally optional, but it does give an extra flavor, and nutritional yeast has got a ton of really good B vitamins in there, and it's also a small source of dietary fiber. So it's definitely a nutrient-dense food that you can add. Our dressing is done. I've got it right here in the food processor. It's all mixed together. It smells amazing. And this is gonna be our serving dish. So you can scoop, just a serving size is a cup, but you can scoop however much you would like into a bowl, and we'll top it with the dressing. So I've got our final product here, and I've drizzled the dressing over top and then put a dollop of Greek yogurt on top as well, and it looks delicious. You can enjoy with a spoon or a fork. So here's a close-up of our finished bowl. It looks amazing. There's so many colors. There's so much good protein and fiber in here. There's lots of good vitamins and minerals from the veggies. Overall, an amazing dish. And something else about this dish to note is if you want to do anything like meal prep, this is a really easy meal to prep. This serving alone for one person, you could eat for about 5 servings, so 5 days a week. So you could meal prep this, and it'll be good in the fridge for about a week in a airtight container. Happy cooking! So here's the recipe card that you can use to follow directions, and a member of my target audience enjoying the meal.